Hello there my RPG lovers and welcome to another video. Fable series doesn't require much introduction.
You don't look much like hero material to me.
It's a famous IP that had its ups and downs, but overall there's a lot of reasons why people love these games. Unfortunately, the last couple of installments in the series were not so good to say the least. My personal experience with the Fable series is very limited actually. I only played Fable The Lost Chapters back in the day on PC, which was like 14 years ago. So I really wanted to sit down and play all of these games so I can share my honest opinions about them with you guys. Even the first game was almost like a fresh experience for me in a way, because it's been so long since I last played it. So sit back and let me tell you about my experience after playing the Fable trilogy. Huge thanks to all of my channel supporters, and if you want to find out different ways to support the channel, stick around to the very end. I'm getting very close to 100k subs, which is kinda crazy, so don't forget to subscribe if you like the video. The first Fable game came out in 2004 for Xbox, and later in 2005 it was expanded with the Lost Chapters expansion and re-released on PC. Fast forward to 2014, Fable received a remastered version called Fable Anniversary. That's the version that I've been playing on Xbox Series X.
You little snot bag, you know nothing of the world.
The Anniversary version improved the quality of visuals a lot, and it also improved the performance on consoles. Even so, I did find some annoying frame drops on Series X, especially in populated places. Besides that, the game usually manages to maintain that 60 FPS mark. This is the only Fable game that I played before, but I barely remember anything about it. The only thing I did remember is some parts of the story and characters, and a little bit about the gameplay. And here's a fun fact for you: back then I had an old channel where I uploaded this random gameplay video about Fable. So technically, my first gameplay video on YouTube ever was about Fable. Anyway, Fable Anniversary still holds up incredibly well when it comes to the visuals. It looks way sharper compared to the old version of the game because the fidelity is way higher in general. The incredible artistic style is a huge reason why the game aged so well. Ironically, it looks even better compared to the second game, but that wouldn't be a fair comparison, because Fable II never got the facelift treatment, unfortunately. The colorful style of the game and the presentation in general creates a very light-hearted atmosphere. Up to the point where Fable feels like it's made for kids, which it is, in a way.
You need to decide if behaving like that is worth it, my young friend. I'll leave it at that for now.
However, the cutscenes that you watch every now and then when you progress through the main story have a much darker tone. It's almost like a totally different game when you watch and listen to those cutscenes, because they usually have a much more serious and darker tone. They certainly help with taking the story a bit more seriously. Speaking of which, Fable has a very memorable beginning of the story where you get to play as a young boy. Not long after the beginning, the village of Oakville gets attacked, but you manage to survive with the help of an old mage called Maze. Your sister and mother got kidnapped, and the majority of the main story revolves around you trying to find them. Well, actually, you find your sister pretty fast while doing the main quest, but your mother is a different story. Maze takes you to the Hero Academy, where you begin your training and growing up process. The growing up process in Fable was always really cool, although I remember it being a bit longer than it actually is. Even so, I think the pacing is very good. The game uses this as a tutorial section, and it's a very fun way to do it, considering that most tutorials in games are pretty boring and generic. The Hero Academy is a place where you meet some important characters like Whisper, Guildmaster, and Huge Cock. No, but seriously, there was supposed to be a chicken named Huge Cock as a joke, because it was double the size of a regular chicken, but it was cut from the game, unfortunately. All jokes aside, the heavy hand-holding nature of this game is something that I never liked.
In Darkwood, you will find the Chapel of Scorn.
Follow.
Please the deities there, and they will let evil into your soul.
The game constantly feels like it needs to tell you what to do next. Like I said, I love the tutorial in the beginning, but with this game, it feels like the tutorial never ends. Fable is not exactly an extremely linear game, because you get the option to do side quests, explore zones that you unlocked, and do various minor gameplay activities. But even so, it's not exactly an open world game in a traditional sense, where the player can easily get lost or distracted from the main story. So I really don't see the reason why the game is constantly breathing down your neck, unless it was supposed to be another way to make the game easier for kids.
The minion summoner has erected a barrier.
Let's get them!
You'll need to kill him to dispel it.
On the other side, Fable does a great job with making your decisions in the game feel important. The alignment system keeps track of your evil and good deeds, which affects your physical appearance as well. I decided to be a bad boy in this playthrough because I remember playing as a good boy back in the day. Fable has a great attention to detail when it comes to these decisions. My favorite thing about the alignment system is how some NPCs mention your previous deeds. This makes the story decisions more impactful and meaningful.
Wait a minute, I know who you are. You're that Reaper, aren't you? Beat the arena and chopped up that pretty little whisper into hog food, didn't you?
Changing your physical appearance is also a very nice touch, and it's a pretty unique feature actually. You can also alter your physical appearance with tattoos, haircuts, and so on. The game has various small details like this, which makes the game world feel more alive. For example, I was able to hire a bunch of bandits to join my group, or you can hire guards from the city if you play as a good guy. Although maybe you can hire anyone when you have high alignment, I'm not really sure, but it's still pretty cool. Speaking of story decisions, there are some great segments within the main story, and the game is not afraid to put you in a difficult situation.
I'm going to put on a good fight, but I'm not killing you. I can't kill you.
Although, to be honest, it was kinda hard to take the story seriously, because the general vibe of the game is very goofy.
It's painfully obvious you have no interest in the arts. My lyrical opus is wasted on your Philistine ears.
This is something that the sequel will improve quite a bit, but we'll get to that soon enough.
Father! I could have stopped him!
After you complete the arena quest, you find out that the guy called the Jack of Blades is the main antagonist of the game that you have to stop. He's a cool looking dude, but I always thought that he's just another generic, cookie cutter evil bad guy. Come to think of it, that's very appropriate for this game considering how the alignment system works. Almost everything is black and white in this game, there are no shades of grey. Overall, the story in Fable is pretty decent and it has some twists and turns. The best part about it is how you can affect the outcome of the story with the alignment system. It gives the game a strong replay value, and I believe there are 4 different endings in total. But even just in general, Fable is a fun game to replay every now and then. The Lost Chapters expansion adds more content and the final conclusion to the story. Now let's talk about the gameplay in Fable. To be honest, I remember the gameplay being much better than it actually is. That doesn't mean I think the gameplay is bad, it's decent overall, if not a bit janky. The controls are a bit stiff, but you quickly get used to it, at least I did. The combat has 3 default options for attacking with melee, ranged and magic spells. I use swords and the bow quite a bit, and only later in the game I started unlocking actual spells. You see, I'm a dumbass, because I assumed that melee and ranged abilities are going to be under strength and skill tabs. Although, to be honest, that kinda makes sense when you think about it. I rarely even opened the 3rd tab until I was like 15 hours in the game. So I was mostly bonking enemies with my sword and regular attacks and used my bow. You can't select the difficulty on the first playthrough, at least not on the Xbox, I'm not sure about the PC version. Only when you beat the game you can start again on hard difficulty, I'm pretty sure that's how it works. I made the game a lot harder for myself by just using the regular melee and ranged attacks. This made the blocking mechanic even more important, especially in the second part of the game when you frequently get into big fights. You also get a special unblockable attack which does more damage and a damage multiplier. Trying to keep the multiplier high as possible is a fun little mini-game by itself, which makes the combat a bit more engaging. The sound effect for losing the multiplier is very sad, and it makes me feel bad every time it happens. Most enemy types are not that aggressive, so it only takes a couple of good combo attacks to take them down. You need to get better weapons every now and then, otherwise you'll start dealing piss poor damage against new enemy types. This of course makes the character progression a bit more meaningful, and I'm always happy to get a new weapon, although that doesn't happen a lot in this game. I think I changed my weapon about 4 times, but you can also find some unique weapons by doing side activities. The arena questline uses 85% of enemy types in the game, and it also shows you how unbalanced the combat can feel. The white werewolves are the most annoying enemy type in the game, because they have this plunging attack which knocks you down, and they spam it like crazy. That was the most annoying round in arena for me, even though technically you have quote-unquote harder rounds. Then again, I didn't have any actual spells that I could use, which would certainly make things even easier in general. Although the difficulty is still very forgiving, especially because the resurrection files. Even if you don't try to find them, you'll collect more than enough of these items to trivialize almost all combat encounters. I believe the heroic mode doesn't allow you to use these items, and I'll definitely check out this harder gameplay mode in my future playthrough. I wish the sequel kept this feature, but unfortunately it didn't. The boss fights are quite decent in Fable, considering the age of the game. You have some regular fights where bosses have a couple of unique mechanics, and some very gimmicky fights where you have to do something specific in order to beat them. Some of the spells that you can learn are pretty cool and very powerful, but like I said, I kinda missed out on that. The itemization in the game is quite decent in general, and you can find a respectable amount of different armor sets. Even this feature is affected by the alignment system, which is cool. I actually think the first game did a better job with itemization, because armor pieces in the sequel almost serve no purpose except the cosmetic side of things. I mean, they have a stat or two, but they're not that important. The first game has armor stat on top of other stats, which felt like it makes the armor more useful. Although to be fair, your main character stats directly comes from investing points into them. That seems way more important than any stat you'll find on gear pieces. The game rewards the player for discovering secrets, and you need to figure out how to open demon doors and collect special keys for chests. This is hands down the most fun side activity you can do in the game. Although even the quote-unquote secret places on the map are not that secret because of the very simple level design. That's another thing which the sequel will improve in a way. Speaking of side activities, you can get your own house, get married and grow old. In fact, you continue growing older as you play the game, which is very cool actually. I mean, getting older is only cool in the game. I turned 32 recently. Hooray. But hey, still got those gains though. A lot of quests in the game didn't age all that well. Trial and error quests are pretty annoying. There's also time quests and stupid escort quests. Some of them are really annoying to do and not fun at all.
Follow. Follow.
Coming!
Although I like the idea of taking quests from the guild table and being able to get more gold by doing specific challenges on the quest. You don't have to do all side quests, especially those that will negatively affect your alignments. But I always like how the game gives you the option to do the same quest differently in a good or evil way. Overall, I like the first Fable quite a bit, and I will gladly come back for another playthrough in the future.
Quite profound that. You can quote me if you like.
Fable II came out in 2008 on Xbox 360. I played it on Xbox Series X, but now I wish I tried to emulate it on PC, even though it still doesn't look fully stable through emulation. Fable II runs on 30 FPS, and it was a bit hard for me to get used to it after playing Fable Anniversary. But after about an hour of gameplay, I completely forgot about it, so it's not a huge deal breaker for me. Although it's a bit sad that Fable II never received the same remaster treatment like the first game. This game also looks way worse compared to Fable Anniversary, and I know it's not a fair comparison, but it's just a fact. Putting that aside, I can tell you right away that this is my favorite Fable game.
Jump! Jump! Jump!
Dive! What? Sorry!
You always have to be different.
I never played it before I started working on this video, and I'm glad I decided to wait and share my honest opinions about it. The second Fable game does a lot of things better than the previous installment, but it also does some things worse, especially when it comes to the gameplay. The story, on the other hand, has exceeded my expectations, so let's start with that.
Where did you come from? Who are you?
Fable 2 gives you the option to play as a boy or a girl, and you start the game in the city of Bowerstone. You have an older sister called Rose, and both of you are homeless kids, dreaming about living in the castle. Rose is basically your guide in the tutorial section of the game, where you learn basic mechanics, which are very similar to Fable 1. A traveling merchant is offering a magical music box for 5 gold, and you do a couple of tutorial quests so you can buy the box and make a wish. After you buy the magical music box, it seems like nothing happens when you try to make a wish, but shortly after that you get invited to meet Lord Lucian in the castle.
But nothing must stand in my way.
No, wait! Don't! No!
Yeah, Lucian is our new antagonist, and I think he's way better than Jack of Blades from the previous game.
These sensations will soon be as familiar as your own heartbeat.
He is still a stereotypical evil bad guy who wants to destroy the world, but he's a well-written character and a bit more charismatic. I like the beginning of the story in Fable 2 a lot, because it leaves you with some unanswered questions which made me curious about the main story. It was still kinda obvious why Lucian did what he did, because you're some sort of a hero again and you can stand in the way of his evil plans. Fable 2 does an amazing job with making the major characters interesting and memorable. It brings back some old characters from the first game like Teresa, who is your main guide throughout the whole game. I was really afraid they're going to try and do some stupid plot twist like they did in the first game, but luckily they didn't. Yeah, Teresa is 500 years old, somehow, and she's guiding you like the previous guildmaster in Fable 1. Your main mission is to gather 3 heroes and unite them so you can stop Lucian from destroying the worlds.
Well, hello there.
This mission takes you to various locations in the game where you have to do specific quests for these heroes. Like I said, Fable 2 has some amazing characters and they all have something unique. Each hero represents a specific parameter, strength, will, and skill. Hammer is the first hero you have to recruit, and there are some very entertaining interactions you'll have with this hero.
You lost, little girl.
I think it's a bloke, Ron.
Yeah, that's what makes it an insult, you idiot. Now shut it.
They also did a great job with making some small character development segments for these heroes, which kinda took me by surprise.
You idiot! You stupid fool! I could have stopped him before he...
Garth is a powerful mage, and he's the only character who has a bit more serious personality. He looks very cool, and the quest for recruiting him is very interesting, from the story perspective at least. And last but not least, we have Reaver, who is a pretentious thief with a very silly personality.
That's it. Scoot. Off you go. Vamos. Que weg. Allez-vous-en.
He's a huge jerk basically, and a comedy relief character I guess, although you can say that for various NPCs in the game.
That's no good.
The voice actors did an amazing job for all of these characters, and that can't be overstated.
What exactly does Lucian want?
Aside from godlike power? That's a tough one.
When I knew him, he wanted to resurrect his family. Probably still does.
Fable 2 has some proper cutscenes throughout the game, and not just slideshows like in Fable 1. The production value was obviously much higher in the sequel in general. Overall, I love the story and characters in Fable II. So what about the gameplay? Well, the core mechanics have some notable improvements. For example, running actually feels like running now. You still can't jump, but you have some places on the map where you can jump off. Controlling your character feels a bit less janky, although like I said, the game works in 30 FPS, so it's not exactly extremely responsive. Although Fable 2 doesn't require much precision when it comes to the gameplay, and when it does, it's usually just a stupid minigame. Yeah, the sequel introduces jobs, which are just a bunch of minigames where you can earn some money. I hate them with a burning passion. Getting to the next level is painfully slow and boring, even though the minigames are okay in general. They get faster and faster, and trying to have a good timing while playing on 30 FPS is stupid but not impossible. Besides jobs, the sequel also has a lot more side activities that you can do, like bounties. These activities work the best when you wanna take a break from the main quest and exploration, and to be fair, it seems like they were meant to be played like that. Anyway, Fable 2 has the same idea for combat. You still have 3 different ways to defeat enemies. You can still combine those 3 styles together or just focus on one, it's all up to you. However, this time around you have a bit more control over the progression system. Each enemy drops different orbs, which you can use for increasing your abilities and getting new spells. The weapon you use against the enemy will determine the orbs you get. This is very similar to Improve on Use system that we can find in many other RPGs. I find it a bit annoying that you constantly need to hold the button to collect orbs instead of just automatically looting them. The sequel will streamline this process and you'll get the orbs automatically. But that's not the only thing which the sequel will streamline, unfortunately. We'll get to that soon enough. I feel like I keep saying that.
You can quote me if you like.
Anyway, the game is a bit obsessed with holding down RT button. You use it for watching an in-game cutscene or when you have to focus on something specific. I know they try to keep all segments of the game more engaging, but it's just annoying sometimes. Using the ranged weapons in this game feels very good, especially when you upgrade them and get some new abilities. You can shoot very fast if you reload your gun at the right time, and this is my most favorite way to kill enemies. It's also a very brainless playstyle, but the same argument can be made for all playstyles in the game pretty much. The melee combat flows a bit better in the sequel, and I like the strong attacks that trigger the slow-mo effects. However, the main problem with Fable 2 is the difficulty, or the lack of it to be more precise. This game is almost completely devoid of any challenge. There is no mana bar like before, and you can literally spam your spells over and over again. I like how they added the ability to charge some spells, and the special aiming mode is cool. Every damaging spell can be aimed at one enemy, and you can cast them as AoE spells. While this is certainly a nice addition to the gameplay, they failed to make it feel important, because the game is just extremely easy and forgiving. Don't get me even started about boss fights. Even calling these NPCs bosses is a bit of a stretch. I was very disappointed at the end because I thought we were going to actually fight Lucian, or have a proper boss fight at least with someone, but nope. Even some important segments of the story, like the commander in the spire, are very boring and disappointing. That's not even the worst part. We have trolls back as boss fights in several different segments of the main story, and they are somehow even worse than in Fable 1. It's just a gimmicky fight now, where you have to hit specific spots on the body with a ranged weapon, that's it. I mean, I know they just had a couple of mechanics in the first game, but it was still way better than this. They made an easy game even easier, so all the improvements with the combat system are almost irrelevant. On top of that, you can't even die in this game, you just get knocked out and lose some experience, which is like whatever. And you can still find resurrection files, because God forbid that a little hero even comes close to being challenged. I don't know why they just didn't include a harder difficulty like they did in the first game. There is only one fixed difficulty that you can't change. That being said, I still think it's fun to kill enemies despite the lack of difficulty. You can always make the game harder for yourself if you wish, but that's not an excuse. Fable II tried to expand some features from the first game and they were semi-successful. For example, the world is much bigger now and we have more zones to explore. The sequel feels more like an open world game, basically. This makes exploring and finding items on the map more enjoyable than in the first game, and I like the map design in general. The Crucible, on the other hand, is basically an extended version of the arena in the first game. You need to go through 8 different rounds, and each time you'll change the arena, which is cool. However, this brings us back to all the problems with boss fights and the combats. It's not like the arena in the first game was very challenging, far from it actually. But at least it had a proper boss fight at the end and you couldn't just spam everything like crazy. Ultimately, I think the arena from the first game was better than Crucible.
You can quote me if you like.
The Spar questline is reminiscent of another questline in Fable I when you have to spend some time in jail. But just like in the first game, it's a missed opportunity from the gameplay side of things. The story segments of these questlines are fine, but you're not doing anything special or fun with the gameplay. Speaking of which, I also love the segment where you have to go back to Oakville, the first village from Fable I. Especially when you get to this part with the burning bridge, it's a cool way to get very nostalgic about the first game a bit. The Spar questline in Fable II feels like a very cool concept, but it ends up feeling a bit undercooked.
Everyone has their breaking point, and I will find yours.
As for some other features, you have a loyal dog, and he helps you with finding hidden items and chests. He's a very good boy, and you can play with him as well. Some fucking random guy kicked my dog at some point, and I don't know how I restrained myself from not killing him.
Ditty, I think I have something new to sing to you. The animal. No!
But I have to admit, it was kinda funny.
I mean, it's fucked up, but it's funny.
There are a bunch of emotes that you can use, but you first need to learn them from various books that you can find. You can still get married, or even buy property or a business to make some money. It's very cool. You can just explore the world and keep yourself busy with all these activities if you want, even after you finish the main quest. Overall, I freaking love Fable 2, despite all of the issues I mentioned.
But I'm afraid I hate wasting time on nobodies. That's you.
It's a very easy game, but it's still very fun, and it has a special charm to it, just like the first game. Unfortunately, the focus on oversimplifying and streamlining will straight up ruin the sequel.
The uprising has begun. But who will lead the revolution?
Fable 3 came out in 2010 on Xbox 360 and later in 2011 on PC. This game has been delisted on Steam unfortunately, so you can only play it on Xbox or through emulation. I played Fable 3 on my Xbox Series X, just like all of these games, for the purposes of this video. Luckily, Fable 3 got an FPS boost just like the first game, so it runs pretty good on the console. I really couldn't wait to try this game out because I know a lot of people hate it and I wanted to see the reason for that. I literally knew nothing about this game before I started playing and I thought that maybe I'm going to like it, despite the bad reception from the fans. The reception from the critics on the other hand was pretty good. Having such discrepancy between critics and the fans is never a good sign and I would rather believe the fans. Putting that aside, let's talk about the actual game.
You only went and broke it. Look at that. Am I a great teacher or what?
Fable 3 begins with a hilarious cutscene which has nothing to do with the actual story of the game. Once again, you get a choice to play as a boy or a girl, and for the first time ever, the main character has a voice.
Come on, boy. If I have to get up, so do you.
I never felt like this was necessary in previous games, but I'm also not against having a fully voice-acted protagonist. The main character is living in the capital palace of Bowerstone along with his brother Logan, who is the new king of Albion. The story takes a very predictable and boring turn. It turns out that your brother Logan is a crazy tyrant and you need to start a revolution to overthrow him. The game throws at you some decisions to make from the very beginning in order to show the player the morality system. Logan puts you in a very uncomfortable situation where you have to kill your girlfriend or a bunch of people. And why the hell would you care, because the game just started, we don't know any of these characters. Shortly after that, your battle Jasper and the city guard Walter helps you to get your hands on the guild seal, which basically confirms that you're the new hero. Then you go through another tutorial section where you learn combat mechanics, and throughout this whole section I was wondering how the hell do I open my inventory? Or how do I pause or save the game? Well, you can't, because Fable III tries to do something completely different. You get a hub area in the game with a bunch of different rooms. All of these rooms are used for different functions like checking out your gold, equipping weapons and armor, checking out your stats or saving the damn game. Now, who in the right mind would think that this is a good idea? Oh yeah, that guy.
They button mash. All the time, all they're doing is just button mashing.
First of all, I think that having a hub area is great. I like hub areas. The first game did a great job with the Hero Academy, which was basically your hub. The hub area in Fable 3 feels like it's just there so you can access the most basic game features. Removing features like UI elements and the inventory can sometimes help with the immersion of the game. But that's the thing, Fable 3 doesn't remove all of those features, it just makes you work harder to access them for no particular reason. To be fair, previous Fable games never required you to constantly change your gear in order to progress. Although that's not an excuse for making the core functions of the game more tedious. You can teleport to your hub area with a press of a button, but that only makes the whole process slightly less annoying. This is what happens when you start feeling yourself a bit too much as a game director or whatever this guy was.
No rhythm, nothing.
Streamlining features in games can be a good thing and something that players won't even notice if done properly. But when you overdo it, like in Fable's 3 case, you end up having watered down features. This game managed to feel even more linear than Fable 1, which is amazing. Yeah, the more linear design is back, and in the worst way possible. To make things even worse, the areas in Fable 3 feel very disconnected from each other. It was much more fun to discover new areas in Fable 1 because they put more thought into level design. Fable 2 took a more open approach, and I also praised the map design in that game. Fable 3 just took a bunch of random maps and threw them together in a mix. Even when some of these maps are a bit more open, there's almost nothing to find or see. The items you can loot are almost pointless, and there is no rewarding exploration like in Fable 2. Even Fable 1 managed to make you feel good when you loot slightly hidden items off the beaten path. That's because the itemization in that game was actually decent all around. Collecting gold is only what matters in Fable 3 for buying some new items, and later in the game you will literally need millions. Then we have one of the most brain-dead progression systems that I ever experienced. Just like the hub area, you have to take a portal to a special place called Road to Rule, where you can buy some new upgrades for your character. You need to spend different amounts of guild seals in order to unlock new upgrades. It's not just about improving the character, this is the place where you also have to buy other features that we had by default in previous games. You know, things like getting married, buying houses and so on. There's also a bunch of stuff related to stupid minigames, which I never liked that much. The characters you meet during the main quest line are also in front of the gates for some reason. The thing is, all of these gameplay features in Fable 3 feel extremely artificial, gamey and tacked on. When I played Fable 1 and 2, every single feature felt like it makes sense, in a way. For example, in Fable 1 you need to visit the Hero Academy and spend the experience points you gain to get new abilities. Fable 2 started streamlining things as well, and you could do everything from the menu. But they also added a new type of progression system in Fable 2, which encourages the player to focus on a specific playstyle. Fable 3 has none of that. Almost everything feels pointless and watered down as much as humanly possible. To be fair, there are some cool animations in combat, especially for ranged weapons. The core of the combat in Fable 3 is very similar to the previous game, but it does feel smoother. Not only because of the higher frame rate, but it certainly helps a lot.
Don't let him get you down!
Still though, it's a very brainless combat system, but it's not that fun to play. Fable 2 already had a pretty easy combat system, but the game around it was very good, so it didn't matter a lot. Despite the easy nature of the second game, the combat never felt pointless, and I had a lot of fun moments. You can't even see your health in this damn game, because Fable 3 is so different, oh my god.
Look what I can do.
You also can't use your consumables whenever you want, because the game will tell you when is the best time to do so. If you forgot already, I talked about how much I don't like hand-holding, which is something that even the first game does a lot. But I'm always willing to put that aside if the game itself is pretty good despite the problems I have with it. Fable 3 took this to extreme levels because it really feels like the game is patronizing you from start to finish. It's not even about telling you what to do and guiding you throughout the whole game, but deciding when is the best time to allow you to use some basic features is so freaking miserable. The only thing which is slightly cool about the combat system is how your weapons change after the upgrades, and they can also change depending on the morality system. But that's pretty much it when it comes to the positive stuff about this combat system. The worst thing about this, they could have included all of this with the traditional inventory system on top of it, it's that simple. But nope, they felt the need to reinvent the wheel, and you can tell that all of these design decisions feel pretentious as fuck. Like I said, they started feeling themselves a bit too much, and it turned Fable 3 into a horrible mess of a game. Is it the worst game ever? Well, no, you can still have some mindless fun, but I lost the motivation to finish the game, and I don't think you can blame me.
It's a bit lumpy, that one.
To go back to the story discussion, there's really not a lot to add. Besides the fact that the quality of the story went down the hill. Listen, it's not like previous two games had a mind-blowing story, even though I do like the story in Fable 2 a lot. But they had a lot better characters, well-written dialogue, and a great deal of charm to it. Fable 3 comes close to having a couple of good characters, but that's about it. I'm pretty sure I'm going to forget about all of them, except Teresa, that was in all Fable games. And don't get me even started about the dumbass quest in this game.
Let the heavens and the seas, the toads and the eels sing the song in my heart, for she doth love me, and all is well.
Last two games had some stupid quests here and there, but for the most part the main story tried to keep things interesting and varied. Fable 3 had the most boring and poorly written quests in the series, which are devoid of fun. After playing Fable 3, the only thing I can think of is doing another playthrough of Fable 2.
Lovely, aren't they?
I wanted to get Xbox 360 and try to get the Kinect as well, so I can play Fable The Journey, but it seems like that game is pretty bad overall, so who the hell cares? I'm really curious about the new Fable game, but I'm not holding my breath for it. I think the first two games are great in general, despite all the problems I mentioned. I would pay some serious money to see a remastered version of Fable 2 on PC and current-gen consoles. Anyway, tell me your opinion about the Fable series and which game is your favorite. Leave a comment down below.
It's painfully obvious you have no interest in the arts.
Be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed the video. You can also support me by becoming a YouTube member or a Patreon. I also have some cool t-shirts and hoodies in the theme of the channel, so check that out as well. Huge thanks to all of my current supporters, and I'll see you in the next one.